You've got ideas, you've got ambition, you've got no time, or so you think. I'm Marissa Lonick, and I help busy moms with big dreams and no time. Join me each week as I dive into time management strategies, goal setting and achieving framework, and inspiring guests who are juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Dreams don't work unless you do, and just because you're a mom doesn't mean you can't still make it happen, whatever it means to you. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. Hello, Mama listeners. Welcome to the Mama Work It podcast. I am so excited today to welcome our guest, Tracy Borreson. Tracy is a mompreneur and brand identity coach on a mission to help entrepreneurs align their business with their personal brand to make better business decisions and choose the marketing strategies that fit them. With 15 years experience of corporate marketing, Tracy witnessed so many businesses wasting their time and money on marketing strategies that didn't fit their brand, just because someone else said they should do it. So now she's helping entrepreneurs and small businesses avoid that trap by organically using their unique brand voice to grow their influence. This is so awesome, you guys. I'm so excited to have you here, Tracy.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. So let's get started first by tell our listeners a little bit about you and how you got started as a brand identity coach.
Sure. So it's actually interesting. And if you guys notice, I use the word mompreneur in my intro. And the reason why I do that is because before I became a mom, I had no interest in being an entrepreneur. I was very corporate. I have that background, 15 years in corporate marketing, and I was that lady in the suit running through airports with her heels, and I loved it. I had my Starbucks, and it was just my jam, and the clothes and the lifestyle and everything. I just loved it, and I remember actually being at a social event for my husband's work once and him telling everybody about how much I loved my job. And I just sat there and I was like, wow, I'm really lucky because a lot of people don't get to love their job. And I really do love my job. And I was in like a senior management position. So I got to make decisions and it really was just perfect. And then I had my son. I had my son on what was supposed to be my last day of work. So he came exactly 2 weeks early. And so I flipped immediately from executive to mom. And I was just different. It was very weird for me because I had never experienced a shift like that in terms of my personal values and just all of the, not all of, but like quite honestly, like 85 to 90% of the things that I thought were important before I was a mom were not on my list anymore. So I did go back to work. I'm from Canada, so we get a year for maternity leave. So I took the year off and I went back to work part-time. And I felt like I couldn't contribute part-time. So like coming from an executive role where you're working like 50, 60, sometimes 80 hours a week, and then coming back in like a 15 hours a week capacity, I was like, well, like, it's kind of nice that you want to pay me for that, but I'm not doing anything. And then I got into the spot where the VP of marketing left and the VP of sales left, and I was really the best suited person to take over those roles. And so I did end up going back full time. And it was at that point I was like, wow, I'm spending 40 hours. And I was very specific at that point. I'm like, I will work 40 hours a week. And that is it. Cause I've got I want to be home for family dinner every day. And that's it. And so I was doing that, but then I wasn't getting the stuff done. I wasn't feeling like I was contributing. And like, I don't know if anybody else has done like 2 vice presidency level jobs at the same time, but you can't do it in 40 hours a week and manage 2 teams. And it's just not a thing. And so I was like, okay, this is not going to be for me. And my boss offered me a position doing part-time sales. And when she offered me that, I was like, why would I do part-time sales for you when I could do part-time sales for me? Like, I, what if I could spend 4 hours a day, which is still then only part-time, doing sales for just something I wanted to do? So that's what I did. And I just like, I talked to my husband. I was like, okay, what if I make no money for 3 months? Like, what is that going to look like for us? And we were like, okay, like we were fine. So we were like, okay, I just quit my job. And I was like, okay, except now what? Like, what do I do? So I have all this background in marketing, so I should probably do something in marketing. Except the problem is I have a love-hate relationship with marketing since I started in marketing. So I went to school for marketing. All of my jobs have been either marketing related jobs or jobs within a company that's focused on a marketing solution. So everything was marketing for me. And I so many times in my journey in marketing, I was just like, what is this? Like what value am I adding to the world? Because I am marketing retail furniture. It didn't it wasn't authentic for me. I didn't feel like I was contributing anything. So I got a really nice opportunity to look at that and say like, wow, like something keeps pulling me back here. So there's something I like about it, but like, what is the thing I like about it? And like a lot of people, I think at the beginning, I took on clients doing different things. And what I realized that I really loved was the brand voice work. So helping people figure out what their unique voice is, the unique things that they say in the market that make them stand out from other people. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to do all the other marketing things that other marketing people are doing. I'm going to focus on this voice. And when it came to the entrepreneurs, like, guys, that is you. Like, there's no like wizard behind the curtain, right? Like, there's not, you don't have that. It's you. Your brand is you. So your personal brand shows up in your business. And again, like I watched so many people this like you need to have a podcast, and so they go have a podcast, or you need to have a Facebook group. That's like pretty much the big one right now, right? Everyone thinks you need to have a Facebook group to be successful in your business, and it's just absolutely not true. And some of those things are well suited for you based on your individual personality and your personal brand, and some things aren't. So there's a lot of people in the market telling you all these things you should do, and not enough people helping you figure out for you what are the right things. Here's a library of things, but I think I can help people figure out those things. And it's been amazing because I do one-on-one coaching. I have some group programs now that I'm running. And it just is so amazing to watch these people make decisions with a confidence in themselves instead of hoping that someone else can tell them the answer. They can find the answer from themselves.
Great. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing. What a great story. It sounds like you've really been on a journey and you've really found what you're passionate about. And it sounds like you're helping a ton of people. So that's awesome. I want to really dive into this personal branding topic because I think it's so important, not only for entrepreneurs, but for, those working in corporate environments. And a lot of our audience, right, are busy working moms. So tell us just kind of in a nutshell, what is personal branding and what does that mean for anybody?
So simply, your personal brand is you. It's actually funny. One of the things I always tell everybody, I do my best thinking in the shower. So I was in the shower today.
Same girl. Yes.
Yeah. It just, I don't know, the water and just like, oh, it's so good. The best ideas come. But I was thinking about this today. It just popped into my head because everybody, when you're like, especially if you work in a company or you work as an entrepreneur, you're probably familiar with the concept of an ideal customer profile. Yes. Or a client avatar. They call it lots of different things, target audience. But the big thing right now is to create this avatar for them, right? Like, what do they look like and who are you talking to? And I've always, like from the time I had my first marketing job, I always thought of a company as a person as well. So, but very few people actually create an avatar for who they are. I mean, like on Facebook you do, but in terms of like all the things that go into that, like what are you? Who do you want to serve? How do you want to show up in the world? And I think this is the really big piece where personal branding kind of bridges the gap between entrepreneurs, even like stay-at-home moms, there's a big struggle on this front too, because people don't have that identity for themselves anymore, and they don't live into it. They just exist.
Right.
And in the corporate world, I actually wrote a blog post on the climbing the corporate ladder versus your personal brand. And it was based off of an article I read in Forbes, which I consider a fairly trustworthy like publication. And half of the stuff they have in there, and it's true, it's things that people do to climb the ladder, but you can't embrace your personal brand and do that at the same time. So it was really interesting. And if the listeners are interested, check out my blog, tlbcoaching.com/blog. It just, nobody thinks about life from a personal branding perspective, right? Like who do I want to be and how do I want to show up? Because it's so powerful in being an empowered parent. It's so powerful in figuring out like where you want your career to go. Me personally, in my career, I always, and I think a lot of people are like this, I floated, right? Like I got offers, they were better, I took them. Like the very first job I got was at the same company my dad was working at, because one of the other executives was just like, I need help with this. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, sure, right? Like I didn't think about it. I didn't think about where I was going in my career. I just like went with the flow. And
kind of like more
it got me
short term. You're just looking kind of short term goals.
Yeah. And well, I think a lot of times, like, especially for me, I went to business school, and in business school, it's pretty much just like, where can you make the most money? But like, I still at that point, I floated, right? Like, I sent out my resume and I got a job offer. So I accepted the job offer, right? Like, I didn't try to pick a company that was matched to me in terms of my personal values. And that's why twice I took a pay cut to leave to go elsewhere, because I was like, I can't, I just need to get out of here. And I don't want people to have to make decisions that way. You don't have to make decisions that way. So getting familiar with your personal brand and knowing what are your personal values, what are your core beliefs, what is your zone of genius. So not just like skills and expertise, guys. Like what is it that you feel like a thought leader in, right? Because it could be a variety of different things. And those things, those times, those things that you do in your job that give you like they spark something inside you, and you're like, oh, this is so fun, or like I really love to do this, or I just hope that this happens because then I get to do this, right? Like those are the things that I call it personal brand alignment. So the person that you are is just like 100% aligned with doing that activity. And the goal of life is to do as many activities that are aligned with your personal brand as possible, right? I always also tell people like you can't get 100%, right? Like sorry, at some point you're going to have to clean a toilet.
Yeah.
You're going to have
There's
to
always going to be
do the
parts of your
dishes.
life that you don't love doing, right? But yeah, I like to think of those specific things that you're talking about that align
Mm-hmm.
as things that you're not watching the clock when you're doing. And when you do check the clock, you can't believe so much time has passed because you've just been
Mm-hmm.
kind of in the zone working on this passion project or whatever it is, that the time just flew and you're like, whoa, it's already this hour, right?
Yeah. Well, and like I think because I know that Marissa, you talk a lot about time and the concept of time and how you're using your time, and that's exactly it, right? We all get the same amount of time in a day,
Yes.
but you get to decide what percentage of that time is spent doing things that align with you, and what percentage of time gets spent doing things that are not aligned with you. And I know that sometimes it can seem hard, right? Like people get into patterns of doing all of these things that aren't aligned with them. And then they're like, well, this is just my situation. These are my circumstances. I can't do anything to get out of that. But at the same time, you can do that for a very small amount of time. And if it's an activity that seriously can fill your tank, that gives you that energy, you can do it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and it can make a big difference in the rest of your day.
Yeah. So just feeling like you're really making choices that align with your values. I love that. Tell us or tell our listeners, what are some tips to develop your personal brand, whether you're an entrepreneur working in corporate America or corporate wherever you are listening? What are some ways you can do this? What are like 3 easy, tangible tips they can take from this, listening to this conversation, and go from there?
Yeah. So the first thing I always recommend is just noticing the things that light you up. Because again, a lot of times we just experience them and they just float by, but those are the clues. Those are the clues towards your personal brand. So whether it's when I was in corporate as a manager, I used to do an exercise called Love Loathe. And I keep talking about it. I have to look up. It's not my thing. I found it. Someone else invented it. But what it is just in essence, it's a survey of like, what are the job activities that you do? What are the ones that you love? And what are the ones that you loathe? And what I used to use it for is trying to reassign job tasks. If there was like something somebody loved and something somebody loathed, then I could move over to make sense. Or if we were hiring a new employee, that we could try and find somebody who loves these types of things that the current employees hate. And not that, again, you can't like get rid of all those things, because you got to answer emails, or you got to do copy, like make copies or something, right? Like at some point you're going to do something in your job. Even entrepreneurs, right? Like entrepreneurs who have a business that's based totally around them, they still do stuff they don't want to do, right? Like calendar management is the bane of my existence, and I have to do that so I can book coaching calls, right? Like it's just something I have to do. But because I feel my working time with like 80% of the things that I love, that doesn't feel so hard. So it's just noticing those things. And if you are a manager, I would encourage you to try that with your team, because it's very, very powerful. And some of these things are like so simple to like switch between people. I had an employee who hated doing PowerPoint presentations, and I love doing PowerPoint presentations. So I was like, oh, great. You can just do this thing that I'm doing that I don't like doing, that you don't hate. And I can do the PowerPoint presentations. And it was a beautiful thing. And everybody was super happy about it, right? But if you're not a manager and you're not doing like an actual exercise like that, it's still important to notice the things that light us up. So that's really the most critical piece of your personal brand. 2 is thinking about who you want to be, right? So when we think about the things we want for the future, we often think about things we want to do, right? Like, what am I going to do differently? A lot of the time, actual success in being able to do those things is to be the type of person who achieves those things. So I had a mentor once who explained to me that most people think in this formula of we do things, and then we have things, and then we be things. So we do an activity, so we do a job, and then we have money, and then we be happy, right? The thing is that flipping that formula on its head can actually have way more effectiveness in moving you forward in your life. So picking who you want to be. So like, I want to be a peaceful mom, or I want to be an empowered leader, or I want to be somebody who can like own my space in terms of saying like, I only work 40 hours a week, right? Like I'm not like, I can be an executive and I can only work 40 hours a week. You can choose to show up as that person. I just finished reading the book An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. It's written by Chris Hadfield, who's a Canadian astronaut, which is still very unusual because like we have a space program, but we don't have a space program that goes into space. But in his book, in the very beginning, he tells the story about how when he was 9 years old, he watched the moon launch and he decided that he was going to be an astronaut. In 1969, there was 0 ways for a Canadian to be an astronaut. It just wasn't possible. What he did anyway was decided that he was going to make decisions every day that an astronaut would make. So would an astronaut eat his vegetables? Would an astronaut do his homework? And he made his decisions as if he was an astronaut. and now he's an astronaut. Now he's a retired astronaut.
So you kind of have to play the part to get there.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, people always say that even in corporate, like, dress the part, right? Like, if you want to go up, you dress the part, but you can dress the part, but you gotta be the part, right? Like, I also have another coach that I work with, and he has a client, and he was working with her, and she wanted to move up to a directorship level. And she was telling him all the activities that she was doing. And he's like, well, you're not acting like a director. You're not making it easy for them to see you in that role. And again, it's things we just don't think about. We think we're going to do the hard work, and everybody says just work hard, and then you work your way up. But if you look at it from a place of like, okay, I'm going to be this, like, you guys, I would love a world where there's more like women who are high level, even in corporate, but like high level in wherever, government, corporate, hospitals, everywhere, because it's possible to have this balance. But the tip number 2 is decide who you want to be and then show up as that person. And I'll leave this as tip number 3 as well too, right? Like, you're gonna fail. At some point, you're gonna fail at something. It's not possible. Nobody ever who has gotten anywhere has not failed at something. The difference in those people is that they don't get defeated by their failure, right? So, like, the first time I went to launch a group program, I had one person register for it. And I'm like, well, that's not a very good group, is it? So I just coached them one-on-one, which ended up being fine. And then I created a whole new one-on-one program based on what I learned from them. But there's so many opportunities to learn. I'm going to make this an A and a B, because now I've gone into like the learning thing, because there's also an opportunity to get stuck in learning. So, like, there's a lot of ways for us to consume things nowadays. Consume on social media. Like, there's an online course for like everything now, right? And they're like, oh great, this is a $27 course for whatever. I'll just learn all the things. And again, at the end of the day, if you're not gonna be, and you're not gonna try, and you're not gonna fail, then all of the learning isn't actually gonna take you anywhere. So you can fill your library with books, but if you're not going to share it with people, then I use this reference a lot. And your brain is like a library. All of the things you've learned, whether it's educational content or your experience or what have you, is in your brain and is compiled in a certain way. So you are uniquely situated to deal with your life and the things that you put in your life. And when you die, that is gone. Your books are not recoverable. They are burnt. They are gone. And then my asterisk now is, don't burn your books. If you want to get rid of your books, please send them to me. I'm trying to build a library. But the whole concept is it's gone, right? And your failures and all of those things, they are helpful to people. So when it comes to like externally, first you have to build your personal brand internally. You can't talk about it to other people unless you build that. So steps 1 and 2 are more the internal piece. And then actually getting out and telling people, knowing your personal brand is going to empower you in all these places, and then sharing your personal brand. So if you're in the corporate world or you're looking at entrepreneurship, sharing that personal brand is critical. And it helps in relationship. Like, again, like, it helps everywhere, right? Like, sometimes I'm like, I'm not a relationship coach. I'm not a relationship coach. But when you look at like, and I think because I've experienced it myself, I'm sure a lot of people have, you go into a relationship and there's certain things that the other person likes. So you try to be that. And like, I have a friend who did that. Like, I watched her do it for years, and I was lucky because I did it in one relationship, and then it was like, heck no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just going to show up as my authentic self from the beginning, because they might as well know this is who I am, and if they don't like me, then we shouldn't be together. But it's just easier, guys. It's just easier to show up as your authentic self. Every time you try to show up as something else, there's more effort that goes into it. So it's just getting back to that place where we feel confident in who you are and your personal brand. And that's why I like to call it a personal brand, because it's how you show up. It's if you think about your favorite brand. So I always use Nike as my example, because the word Nike doesn't mean, I mean, like, it means something, but it doesn't mean anything to me, except now what Nike, the brand, has made it mean, right? So now it's like about competitive athletics, and that's what Nike is about, right? They made it mean that. So you get to make yourself mean whatever it is you want to mean. So you get one life, and what's it going to count for? And make it mean that.
Yeah. And it's going to bring you toward the job that is the best fit for you, the career that's the best fit for you, maybe the spouse that's the best fit for you, right? I mean, it's just going to align you with the right people, places, and things that are going to serve you best and that you're going to be able to serve back. I love that. That's so great. All right, Tracy. We are moving on to our lightning round, where we are going to ask you some fun, random type questions, nothing to do with your personal branding, just so our listeners can get to know you a little bit better on a more personal level. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an extrovert. If you guys didn't pick up on that already.
We should have, but always good to ask. All right. If you could go on vacation tomorrow, anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Angkor Wat, Cambodia. It's at the top of my list. It has been for years. I just feel like it's one of those places that's so like mystical. And what I'm assuming I will experience when I am there is this level of quiet that I've never experienced in my entire life. That's just what I think it is. So it's, I don't know. It might seem random, but it seems spooky and mystical and cool and silent.
I've heard it's really beautiful. So,
And I have a 2-year-old, so like silence isn't a thing.
yes. Speaking of your 2-year-old, what snack do you eat when he goes to sleep?
So my rule is that I don't snack after he goes to sleep.
Well, that's
just a
amazing. Good
habit
for
that I
you.
have. I like maybe we'll have a cup of tea.
Okay. Gosh, goals right there. Thank you. What's your cocktail of choice?
Um, so I normally would go, I got it. So I'm like a 50-50 on this: margaritas or mimosas.
Hmm.
So like mimosas more like my like
Depending on the
morning,
time of day, maybe.
yeah, the morning drink. But one thing, because I also love wine, and when I was pregnant, I thought like I was just gonna miss wine so much, and then I ended up missing margaritas, which is so random. I live in Canada. It's snowing most of the year. Like it's not like summertime, but I love a good margarita. So as soon as first time I went out with the girls after I had my son, margaritas.
Awesome. All right. Well, before we wrap up, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Definitely. So I like to show up mostly on LinkedIn. So you can find me under Tracy Borreson. I'm also anything. So my LinkedIn profile is also tied into a brand that speaks. That is kind of just my tagline I like to talk about. I like to help people create brands that speak to themselves and to others. I am on Facebook, but I'm on Facebook a little bit. So mostly on LinkedIn. I do also have a blog. So on my website at tlbcoaching.com. I have my blog, and I write on there weekly. I like to tell people I'm very opinionated about branding and all the stuff that people think branding is that it isn't. So I'm trying to bust those myths to give people some more empowerment in making their marketing decisions. And so LinkedIn and my blog is mostly where they do that. I will also say I have recently started a YouTube channel. It's called Be a Human in Business.
Yes.
But me and a couple of the other ladies that I've met in the past year who are also very passionate of just about like showing up as a human in business. So we have me from kind of the marketing perspective, we have a sales, we have operations, and we have a customer experience gal on there talking about business challenges from kind of the holistic view about being a human in business. So if you guys are interested in that type of thing, check it out. It's also really a lot. All of us have a corporate background, so it's a cool perspective on how to make sure, even if you're being very businessy, you keep the human perspective in mind.
Great. Oh, I love that. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you so much for being here today. It was a pleasure chatting and learning more about personal branding. And I'm definitely going to be doing some of those tips after this podcast. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa.
You've been listening to the Mama Work It podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and would love if you could take a quick minute to leave me a review on whichever platform you're listening from, and maybe even send a note to a fellow mama friend recommending it. Reviews and recs help this podcast grow and reach more like-minded, awesome moms. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click that button so we can stay in touch, girl. By the way, if you haven't checked out the Mama Work It website, please do. There are lots of free resources and great articles there that can help you with the juggle of work life, mom life, wife life, fill in the blank life. So head on over. Thanks again for being part of the tribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, keep on working it, mama.